Let's break down this Doomfist composition on Servasa, try to figure out why it's so good. Let's break down the team compositions real quick. Let's try to figure out what these team comps are going to be playing for. Mirrored Soldier Genji, mirrored backline of Kiriko and Lucio, and the differences between the tank on Doomfist and Jungle Queen. And so both of these teams have the exact same win condition of being able to take angles through brawling and rushing in order to enable their soldier and find conversion into picks from their cooldowns in managing space and cooldowns. So when we watch the entire team fight, the win condition of each composition is to be able to have more cooldowns and the right cooldowns to be able to convert your rush into kills and take map space. It's not have those angles, but having those angles allows you to trade those cooldowns to be able to make that happen. Watch how the Houston Outlaws on the point here are trying to bait as many cooldowns as possible from the rotation from the Vegas Eternal. And the Vegas Eternal doesn't just stand on point and try to trade cooldowns because that's a totally unadvantageous spot because you don't have any corners to hide behind. And so what we see here is Fearless trying to initiate in, get value or bait cooldowns and get out. And again, Fearless going in, getting value, cooldowns. There's the Queen Rush. Here's the rush from the Vegas Eternal to try to convert their space, their neutral positioning from their own cooldowns into kills. And if they don't get these kills here, the Houston Outlaws are very, very content with having this rush go through because they no longer have to deal with the threats of the Vegas Eternals amp speed, the Queen Rush, the Queen Shout, and the Suzu is already forced out. So the Houston Outlaws have a really good neutral positioning behind corners here. And this is essentially, this fight right here is determined already who's going to win this team fight because the Vegas Eternal already burnt their entire fuse out. They're done. They're on defense now, and the Houston Outlaws have this slow, oppressive fight into the Vegas Eternal. And you can see that by the Vegas Eternal giving the space because they know that they're not on top of tempo right now and that they have to back up in order to regroup. And they don't do so with the proper urgency, and not just the urgency, the original engage in already set them up for this poor situation where they have to rotate out and give all their tempo. And so for them, it's better to just die on point because either you're going to prolong this team fight out, you're not losing and lose a ton of percentage in time, or you're going to just reset and lose very quickly. And so that's why we see the Vegas Eternal, instead of fully running out, just dying on point. Let's look for the retake on the Vegas Eternal really quick. So what they're trying to do is create angles for their soldier to be able to pull the cooldowns out of the enemies. And if we look at what Fearless is trying to do on the Doomfist here, they're trying to find them out on the rotate and try to punish their open positioning. And so when they see the Queen is low, Fearless tries to go in for an engage. But as soon as he doesn't get the engage, we're just holding our high ground and trying to make the enemies, we're trying to give as much disincentive and resistance to the enemy's rotation into the point as possible, and only initiate on the rotation in when we find a good point to secure a team fight. So if we look again, let's scroll back here. Look at all the cooldowns and all the ults being used. If we slow down here, so Doomfist cooldowns out, Genji cooldowns out. But now we're going in because we have the advantage and the enemies don't have their cooldowns. And so this is a great opportunity to make use out of this one small mistake from the Vegas Eternal in which they were trying to rotate in. And the Vegas Eternal are in complete defense here. They cannot go in. They have to just be able to survive this. Except for the fact that they're on low ground. They don't have the right angles. They have to deal with the Houston Outlaws ults on the high ground. And so this is a complete setting of the tempo from the Houston Outlaws, punishing, all building up from that, punishing the rotation, and now being able to convert their cooldowns and their map control into tempo on the enemy team, in which Vegas Eternal's ultimates are not in a good position here compared to the high ground rush and visor. Rack Attack has to beat and sustain his team, except they're still on the low ground, and we see Violet's counter beat just to keep the Houston Outlaws a little above the Vegas Eternal and convert their space and their cooldowns into this huge advantage. And so Pelican coming out using the blade from the high ground, Vegas Eternal also don't have the ult economy and advantage here, and it's just a cleanup into the next point. We can see how the Houston Outlaws abuses the map and plays dynamically off the map and doesn't just stay on the point and creates as much resistance from the rotation from the Vegas Eternal spawn into the point. The Houston Outlaws can take control of this choke point here, another choke point right here, and then fight for the high ground over here rather than just setting up for this on point fight. And by providing resistance, it allows your enemies to make mistakes. And when you give that allowance to the enemies, perhaps they'll make a mistake. And we'll see here the mistake of fully initiating into a fight here, forcing Dove forcing a fight with Pfizer, and that's going to convert into a really bad fight. The reason why the Houston Outlaws are trying to take this fight is to simplify the match and provide as much resistance from the Vegas Eternal getting to point as possible. By taking this early fight, they're able to force ults and be able to take a low commitment engage and team fight prior to the point unlocking in order to keep the Vegas Eternal in their spawn and limit the amount of space and angles that the Vegas Eternal are taking. So the result of this fight, regardless of its outcome, is always going to be more ult economy for the Houston Outlaws, possibly less ult economy for the Vegas Eternal. So the risk of this play is insanely low compared to the reward of Vegas Eternal burning all of their ultimates, or even winning the entire team fight with the Vegas Eternal burning all of their ultimates. But what's worthy of noting is that they position so far forward just to be able to make use of that. So as you can see here in this team fight, Fearless is going in and pressuring the enemies using his mobility to go in and then also get out for free, nearly. And what this is doing is for the Vegas Eternal, their lack of mobility is really what's killing them and their restraining variable. And so Toyu's Fearless Shout, or Toyu Shout on Queen, is the only ability to be able to rush a target on the Houston Outlaws, except for the fact that the Houston Outlaws are abusing the high ground very well to their advantage, and so there's really nothing to rush onto. And so Fearless's engages are not matched nearly as well as any other engage from the Vegas Eternal, turning into the Vegas Eternal having to give up map space, eventually putting Toyu in a really bad situation, and that is the entire team fight where Toyu falls and nothing is able to become of that. Now let's talk about this fight and why after Toyu falling, this is not a good fight for the Vegas Eternal to be able to try to win. Because even if they try to win this fight, the ult economy is so bad that the Vegas Eternal is going to have to hold the next ult where the Houston Outlaws have all of their ultimates, or a bit more ultimates. And so for the ult economy for Vegas Eternal, using the beat here is a low chance to win the fight versus if you lose this fight, you're going to lose a point and you can fight for the next one. For the Houston Outlaws, even if they lose this fight, they can just save ultimates and go on to the next fight, in which it's last fight, and they take the point and completely win the objective. Let's talk about why the Houston Outlaws aren't trying to take the point from the Vegas Eternals until the point is fully unlocked. Looking at both teams' win conditions, we can obviously see that Toyu wants to be very close to the enemies, as seen from the last 2 points where they're trying to rush into the Houston Outlaws. So for the Houston Outlaws, picking and choosing your engagements in which you take close range brawls with the enemy is very important. If you lose a trade, that's just one more opportunity to fall behind. And so for the Vegas Eternal, they really want the Houston Outlaws to push in and lose a trade. But for the Houston Outlaws, patience is key, and we see that multiple times throughout this fight. First of all, Fearless is not engaging onto the point and letting just Happy and Shu build ultimate charge as well as Violet. And so now they have all of their ultimates, and they're just playing with the Vegas Eternal, trying to kite and make an advantage out of a trade somehow, and then be able to rotate in and take the point. And so when the point unlocks here, we can see Irony doing a Kitsune rush onto the point. But patience is key. The Houston Outlaws know that they can just kite and use their teamwork and rotations to be able to pull away from that Kitsune rush, as well as Dove with his tactical visor. He uses it, and the Houston Outlaws have patience to know that they don't need to engage. And this comes with the maturity of a team and players to be able to have the teamwork and coordination to be able to avoid these ultimates, and the macro game sense to be able to say that it is fine to give up the space to be able to avoid these ultimates and go in after. And so this patience to be able to make a kill box onto point save your cooldowns and forfeit your positioning for your cooldowns to be able to better your win condition of the dive into the kill box onto the point. It's so much better than just taking pointless engagements onto the enemies in which you lose trades and enable the enemy's win condition of rushing with the Junker Queen. Why doesn't the Houston Outlaws try to take this high ground up here on the side? And the reason why the Houston Outlaws doesn't want to take this high ground from the side is because it allows the Vegas Eternal to be able to rush them with the queen. And even though they do have the high ground, it's just not worth it until the point engages and they can use their ultimates to be able to do so. In a fight without the ultimates, we would probably be seeing the Houston Outlaws trying to take this high ground um, slowly and methodically with their Doomfist engages, exactly how they took point on the first point. But because of the queen and because of their ultimates and the change of their fight plan, it makes more sense to just completely give the map control to the Vegas Eternal and then go in with your ultimates afterwards, especially after that flopped rush. Why are we playing so far forward here? Exactly like second point, except this point is even better because of the map. And let's look at this microplay that comes from the individual players knowing all of their jobs and having a strong fundamental macro sense of how to set up for their win condition. If we look at how the map is structured, there are two things to play around this win condition. One are chokeholds. So the chokeholds on this map are rotating through mid or through the side. And let's look for kill boxes. The kill boxes can be either on the point, on the rotation, or right outside of the choke points. And so the reason why we're setting up at this choke point is because there's a kill box and there is a choke to be able to hold the enemies. And even though it's so close to their spawn, it's so advantageous for your win condition that enabling the enemy's win condition is okay, but you're so much more in the advantage that it doesn't even matter if the enemy's win condition is enabled if you're able to pull yours off first. And looking at the positioning of the DPS, the only reason why we were able to convert this engage into an actual win and a pick off of the beginning is because of the solid fundamental macro that the DPS know. In order to be able to play this chokehold, we're not playing spam. We need to flank, look for opportunities, and take engagements. And those can convert into kills. Now, this low health soldier not appeared, what would have happened is that they would have used the kill box, probably simplified with ults, and either died here or rotated back towards point and set up an exact same similar situation where you let the enemies force their way through the chokehold using older cooldowns, and you set up a kill box right on point or right outside of the chokehold to be able to make use of your own win condition and deny the enemies by making them have zero uses for their cooldowns other than getting into your kill box. To beautifully summarize what happened here in the Houston Outlaws versus the Vegas Eternals fights, are the Houston Outlaws had an enormous amount of teamwork and coordination and a greater sense of enabling their own win condition and disabling the enemy's win condition through micro and solid fundamental understanding of their jobs. Many times do we see the Doomfist kiting away from choke points and making sure that the queen has no opportunities to use her shout, gap close, and swing. And every single time that the queen used her shout, it looked like it was forced. It looked like it was in a terrible position to be able to get closer to the enemies rather than have the enemies close and already punishing the Doomfist's positioning. Also, a great use of the soldier to be able to enable these long distance angles to take trades in order to disable the enemy's win condition and have that opportunity of whittling down damage and being able to use the map to your ability and use those natural high grounds and angles in the map to be able to enable your own win condition for your team to be able to dive and translate that cooldown, the forced cooldowns and the map positioning into more energy for your win condition, as well as the ability to kite out and still have value while denying the enemy's win condition. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content, I produce many more, especially in shorts in a more digestible format. Make sure to like and subscribe and feel free to give me a comment on anything that you have on these team fights.